Okay, right, to start screen printing you need to get an image, and from that image you then need to photocopy it onto photocopy paper, so it's nice and thin paper, and then cut out stencils depending on the colours that you want. So if you're going to do a 2-colour screen print, you need to cut out one colour on one stencil and one colour on another stencil. Okay, label them at the top so it's clearly indicated on what you need to cut out. It makes your life easier. So with screen printing we'll be using printing paper, Fabriano printing paper. Other materials that we're going to use are squeegees. This is what you pull the colour through with. And then we've got pigment, pure pigment printing inks mixed with binder to create the screen printing inks. And that is the right consistency that you want for ink to go through the screen. The main thing with screen printing is you need to prepare your area. Okay, so it's really important that you get a dustpan and brush and just check there's no bits of thread, loose bits of pencil sharpenings, anything, and then just check that you've got a clear area. You need to work against this side of the print bed. Okay. The first thing you need to do is, once you've cut out your stencils, you need to put a piece of newsprint. This is very, very thin paper, and masking tape this down. It doesn't matter that you get ink on the surface, but sometimes you get an extra print on the newsprint, so it's quite nice. And you can also transfer this off the print bed. So you want to masking tape the newsprint down first of all, and then you get your printing paper, so this is the Fabriano printing paper, and masking tape that down. Okay, just check the surface is clear of any bits, it's nice and flat. And then you want to do your first colour. Okay, the first colour I'm going to do is red, because we're working to black and red. And you need to lay that down. If you were doing a single colour screen print, you could work like that, but because you're doing a multiple colour, you need to register the corners with a pencil. Okay, so using a pencil, you need to register the corners of your stencil, okay, and that is just making a mark in all the 4 corners so that when you put your next stencil down it will go in exactly the same spot. Okay, sometimes it does slightly overlap because the paper underneath shrinks slightly, but that's fine, but it just gives you a general guidance. So on your stencil, all the areas that have been cut out is where your ink's going to go through. Okay, if you've got paper showing here or here, you want to just rip up some newsprint and put around the edges, otherwise the ink might go there. So just cover it, and the main thing is, don't masking tape the stencil down. You want the stencil to lift up, so only masking tape down the paper and the newsprint. And there's a tiny bit at the top. If the ink did get round here, you could just cut up the paper, but it's just better. Okay, so now only the areas that are going to be printed will show through. So now you need to get a screen, and you need to get a screen that is wide enough for your design. Okay, it doesn't matter if it's huge, it just needs to be wide enough for your design. So these are one of the new screens that we've got, and they're really taut, so it makes a nice print. So you need to lay your screen down over your design. Make sure it's pushed up against this side here. Okay, so try and work in the middle of the screen if you can, and then make sure it's nice and flat. Okay, then you need to get a squeegee, and it must fit inside the screen. Okay, and it also must be wider than your design. When you've got your mixed up inks, What you're then going to do, just give it an extra mix just in case, because you're relying on other people mixing up the inks, okay? So just make sure all the inks are mixed up. And then look at your design, and about 1 inch above your design, put the ink all across the top, wider than your design, just with a spoon. You can always reuse the ink. It's better to have more at the top than not enough. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the squeegee about 45-degree angle towards me, drag it down and then lift it off. Okay. What you can do is have a practice run before, and then I'm going to lift the screen up. Okay. So make sure your hands are spread out across the squeegee, and put all of your body weight forward, because you really have to press really hard to pull it down, and you're only doing it once, you're just pulling it through once. So angle it towards you, press all your body weight down, and then drag it slowly and consistently towards you. Keep the pressure all the way through, right till the end. And then drag it to the end, push it to the end, and then you can reuse all of this, okay? So now I'm going to pull the screen up so you can see what's gone through. Okay, these squeegees have to be washed and put in here. Okay, I'm going to pull the screen up. And there you go, there's your first colour, okay? The important bit also is to wash the screens. So you can take your stencil off. Right, when you're washing the screens, it's going to be noisy. We've got this area here. You need to make sure you wash all the colour off thoroughly. Will gather up at the bottom. And then check the bottom. Once you've washed it, just pop it over here. And then you need to do the same to the squeegee as well. Make sure all the ink's off, because you don't want it to dry on there. Right, stack them there so they can dry. And then, ideally you want this to dry off so you could hair dry this. So what I'm just going to do is move this, and then I can use that one and then show you the second colour. Okay. So here's what I made earlier. So if you're doing the same colour, again, obviously you can use the same squeegee, but the screens need to be clean and dry. Don't use a wet screen because it will wet your paper, okay? So make sure the screen's dry, your paper's dry and your ink's dry, and then you can move on to the second colour, okay? So your second colour will be your darker colour, so your black over the top, unless you want an effect like that where it sits just on top. That might be quite nice depending on your design. And then lay it down and check where your registration is. Mask off all the areas that are shown in the paper. You only want the bits that you cut out to show. So it's a lot to do with preparation, a lot to do with making sure you clean everything, get all your materials ready. Okay, right, let's use this nice and screen. So again, the size of the screen doesn't matter, you just need to have it clear. The screens that have been used a few times, the ink does dye them, but that doesn't matter, it will still work. Okay. Right, check it's all clear, and you can see the width of your design, so again you're just putting the colour along the top. So spread your fingers across, put your body weight forward, and then drag it towards you. Keep the pressure all the way through. Sometimes it can go wrong if people lift off the pressure. So keep that pressure all the way to the end. And then if you push it against the screen, it will save some of the ink. Right, take that straight over to here, and then we'll lift up the screen. Just careful when you lift up the screen, you should put your hands in the ink area. There we go, and there is your second colour. So it kind of makes sense when you've got the second colour on. The first colour, it makes the design look a bit strange. So there's your two colours. Sometimes they can overlap, which is quite nice, or separate, which is quite nice. So you can either have two colours that sit next to each other or can sit on top of each other, depending on your design. Okay, and then you'll do the same cleaning process. Clean it down, wash the screens both sides, and then stack them up. Okay, and that's it. Okay, here are some examples of screen printing. The first example here shows a single colour screen print, so that is using a single stencil to cut out your design and a single colour. Here it's using a two colour screen print design, so we've got a yellow as the first colour and then the black sits on top. Again, this is an example of a two colour screen print using the grey and the black, so that uses two stencils, one grey stencil cut out and one black stencil cut out. Here are some examples just to show you how colours can sit on top of one another. They don't come through if it's a darker colour underneath. It can be a little bit muted, but it still has a nice effect, so you can just see how those change. Here is an example of a marbling effect where you can use multiple colours that you then smooth around as you're pulling the screen print through. So you can get this effect in different ways. You can get line effects, so that's using multiple colours on one screen. These are negative stencils. Two examples here. This is actual fern leaves, but this is using cut-out stencils, so you can create the background. And the final screen print here is a four-colour screen print. And you can see how the colours can overlap, and sometimes they can dye into each other. So there's some examples of different screen printing methods. Done.